the compensation board, Mr. Speaker, on this issue on a constant basis. I find that to be unfair and deplorable. I myself was elected as an MLA to come up here and do the best I can for the people and constituents that I represent, Mr. Speaker. And I find that I cannot do this, Mr. Speaker, when these regulations are given to the compensation board. Mr. Speaker, years and years of denial from this board and the doctors on this board. I've heard guys coming back and denied for industrial bronchitis after spending 25 years in the coke ovens department. Anybody that's ever spent 10 days out there would probably have industrial bronchitis. But to be denied from these doctors continually, all the time, Mr. Speaker, about, you know, another thing I found in this, Mr. Speaker, is that this bill, for months I've attended these meetings, and the reason I went there was to find out the concerns of these people. And the concerns of these people were that they're going to go back to see the same doctor again and again and be assessed again. Instead of having these people assessed, Mr. Speaker, why not just settle this in a proper manner and give these people what they deserve, Mr. Speaker? They've been injured, they've been seriously injured, some for over 30 years. And on these regulations that are going back from the compensation board, Mr. Speaker, how many of these people are going to get rightfully due what's theirs, Mr. Speaker? Not too many, Mr. Speaker, not too many at all. As I looked at the handout yesterday and I see the nice glossy brochure, a new approach to chronic pain benefits for worker-related injuries, Mr. Speaker, and I looked at it and I read the whole thing and I said, AMA guidelines. There was 3 proposals that were given to the government sometime in December, Mr. Speaker, and one of the proposals had, the first one was the AMA 5th edition. The second one, Mr. Speaker, was the AMA 4th edition with the LMDA, Mr. Speaker. This was the approach that these workers were hoping that the government was going to work on, Mr. Speaker, and accept as a part of all the injured workers of the province of Nova Scotia. But yet again yesterday we see regulations, Mr. Speaker. Regulations. It's the same as when we had we're looking at the MLA from Cape Breton Centre, Mr. Frank Corbett, put legislation, a bill in for the whistleblowers, Mr. Speaker, for protection for workers in the government that come forward as we see what's going on right now nationally in this country. And again, the government decides to go and put regulations in, Mr. Speaker. I just find it unfair, Mr. Speaker, that it's always regulations. Why not put it on the floor of this legislature and let us as MLAs and people discuss this and go to law amendments and discuss what's going on, Mr. Speaker, and not what goes on behind closed doors. I think that this is not an open process. I don't think it's been very open. You can say to stakeholders, you can tell us people that the stakeholders have showed up all the time. It's always been the stakeholders, injured workers, business. I don't think business is very happy, Mr. Speaker, paying such high premiums and they feel like they're not getting their money's worth of this, Mr. Speaker, and I just think that that's unfair to everybody here. But not to put an injured worker on the board and not give them voting rights, Mr. Speaker. We'd like putting an MLA in this legislature and not giving him voting rights and not being able to talk. That is unfair, Mr. Speaker. So what does that do, Mr. Speaker? Well, we'll say we please the injured workers in this province, a second-class citizen, by putting them up there and saying, you can go there, but you can't vote. You can sit there and you can enjoy the snacks that we have at break time, but you can't vote, Mr. Speaker. Is that a democratic society, Mr. Speaker, a democratic position in this government? No, it's not, Mr. Speaker. I personally just think that this is unacceptable by myself and the people at home. When I go to these monthly meetings, how am I going to go home and go to the monthly meeting in the end of May and tell these workers this is the position that myself, as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Nova Scotia, that this is how this government has taken this position? I find it unfair, very cruel, and I think it's just very unfair, Mr. Speaker. And also, Mr. Speaker, they've traveled here today from all over this province, and you can tell that they're upset, Mr. Speaker, and I understand why they're upset. I had the privilege and the honor of being at those meetings and listen to them, Mr. Speaker. You know, and I just think that it's not fair to those people and their families and their children and their grandchildren, Mr. Speaker. And I think, Mr. Speaker, that my riding in Cape Breton Nova covers a lot of the old steel plant, the old Defco piers, the Defco railway, and there's been a lot of injuries over the years down there, Mr. Speaker, and still this always comes back to the compensation board. Since I got elected, I have people coming in my office asking me, Mr. Speaker, I've been injured on the job. Can you please help me? I have to appeal this. I have to go to the Workers' Advisory Council. I mean, I inherited a riding after 32 years of my previous MLA, Mr. Speaker, who was quite well versed at handling compensation, Canada pension cases, Mr. Speaker, and that's what he did. And I see very many across my desk on a daily basis, Mr. Speaker. I just hope and wish, Mr. Speaker, that the government will do and realize that this is not the fair thing, and maybe come up with another alternative and come up with legislation instead of regulations, Mr. Speaker. Again, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to rise here today.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pleased to participate in the debate going into supply. I had thought initially that I wanted to speak specifically about issues in my constituency. However, over the past week or two, I've changed my mind. I wanted to share with members of the legislature and all Nova Scotians some of the work that I've been doing on behalf of the province of Nova Scotia, particularly with respect to the Office of African Nova Scotian Affairs. Mr. Speaker, in August, when the Premier appointed me as the Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs, one of the things that I felt it necessary for me to do to better understand the issues and the concerns facing African Nova Scotians is to go out and meet with those individuals. We began a process of consultation and meetings with a variety of groups and individuals, and I want to share to members of the legislature today and all Nova Scotians some of the people we had the opportunity to meet with. Early on, Mr. Speaker, we took the opportunity to meet with Dr. Sharon Oliver in the Annapolis Valley to receive her views. She's an outstanding African Nova Scotian who has contributed a great deal to her community and to African Nova Scotians through a variety of means, Mr. Speaker, particularly and most recently with respect to her work with the African Heritage Society, Black Loyalist Society, and to work with those groups and organizations to help them move forward with their initiatives that they've brought forward to government and to other community groups and organizations. During the time of our tour and our visits with various groups and organizations, Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to meet with people in large settings and individual settings. We met with individuals in their basements, in their rec rooms, in their kitchens. We met with groups and organizations in halls, in meeting rooms, in offices, and we met from one end of this province to the other end. Mr. Speaker, to highlight to members of the legislature some of the groups that we met with, we ended up meeting with and discussing issues of African Nova Scotian affairs with groups like the Black Construction Association, the Cape Breton Black Employment Partnership, African United Baptist Association, the Black Cultural Society, the Black Employment Partnership Committee of the Whole, the Cumberland African Nova Scotian Association, the Lucasville Upper Hammonds Plains Development Association, the Black Education Association, the Black Business Initiative, the African Nova Scotian School Board Caucus, the Africville Genealogical Society, the Weymouth Falls Community Unity Program, the Black Loyalist Heritage Society, the African Nova Scotia Music Association, the Council on African Canadian Education. We met with the African Canadian Services Division of the Department of Education. We met with individuals like Irma Johnson and Dave Haley. We met, Mr. Speaker, with the RCMP Advisory Group on African Nova Scotian issues, and as well we met with a variety of other groups and organizations. As I said early on, Mr. Speaker, we crisscrossed the province to meet with African Nova Scotians in their community. I felt it necessary, rather than to bring them to me, that I would go to them and see firsthand the concerns and the initiatives that they're working on. We visited Shelburne, Yarmouth, Glace Bay, Whitney Pier, Lakeele, Kentville, Southville, Weymouth, Digby, Hammonds Plains, Lucasville, East Preston, North Preston, Cherrybrook, Truro, Amherst, New Glasgow, Upper Big Tracadie, Lincolnville, and Sunnyvale, and other areas in between, Mr. Speaker. We have visited nearly every one of the 47 African Nova Scotian communities in this province, and we have had the opportunity to meet with groups and individuals from each and every one of those communities as we traveled through. Mr. Speaker, the work enabled me to better understand the issues and the concerns that have been brought to government over a period of decades. And the work enabled me to better understand the way that we in the Office of African Nova Scotian Affairs can begin to address these concerns in a systematic approach. I want to point out as well, Mr. Speaker, that some of the earlier successes that we had as an office were in many cases small successes, as you would see it in the scheme of the entire province of Nova Scotia, but big successes with respect to the individual communities. And I can point to a concern that was brought to my attention very early on. When we had the opportunity to visit Cape Breton Regional Municipality, I met with a group or an organization there who were working very hard to protect a hall in Glace Bay. The hall was slated to close and go to tax sale. There was an initiative put forward by African Nova Scotians to protect this hall and to keep it and to revitalize it as a community facility. The hall has historic significance to that community. It's a hall that had historic significance to all of Nova Scotia. The community brought this concern to my attention. I was able to immediately meet with the mayor of CBRM, who was able to work with the community to bring a process forward that protected that hall, that keeps it in the community's domain, that ensures that hall will be protected and used for community interest indefinitely. And that's an initiative that was something that was seen as a positive win for that community and that group, and something that I would say that will stand out as a very early highlight of some of the work that we were able to do. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, it was brought to our attention early on about an initiative in the Digby area where a group and organization was working on a housing project, a housing initiative, and the individual that brought it to my attention was concerned with some delays that were being caused or may have been caused by her ability and their ability to work with the system. We were able to meet with the Minister of Community Services to talk to him, to bring this matter to his attention. He was then enabled to go to his staff and to clear up the confusion, and the project was able to be completed on time, on schedule, and enable the community group to help with a housing initiative for an individual family that was absolutely essential to be done in a time frame that enabled this family to meet weather constraints that were approaching. It was an initiative that was being pressed because of encroaching weather and winter, and I'm pleased to say that the group was able to meet their commitment to that family. We were able to, as a government, ensure that the bureaucratic process followed through in a timely manner, and the family was able to take advantage of their new home, or the renovated home, in advance of Christmas and in advance of impending weather, and that success is something that I am very proud of and our office is very proud of. We were able to participate in and to free up a bureaucratic logjam that was not essential, and we're very pleased that we were able to help that individual, those individuals, and that group. In addition to that, we also see our role in supporting government's initiative, particularly throughout the implementation of the Black Report in the coming budget that we'll be voting on in the near future. This government has installed significant funds towards recommendation from the Black Report as a result of the report that came subsequent to government from CASE, and those substantial revenues show our genuine commitment to move forward on the matter of education, particularly with African Nova Scotians. And I think it's something that has been seen by the community as a progressive step forward, and it enables us to work with the community and the community groups like CASE and like the earlier group, the Black Learners Advisory Committee, to systematically step forward, to take those recommendations, to prioritize them, and to make them into reality and bring programs to the government, to the people of Nova Scotia. I also want to highlight, Mr. Speaker, the opportunities I had within my own constituency. I represent Hammonds Plains, Upper Sackville, which is a constituency that consists of 3 African Nova Scotian communities. The community where I live, Maroon Hill in Middle Sackville, is an African Nova Scotian community, as well Lucasville and Upper Hammonds Plains. These community groups are working hard to ensure that the services provided to all Nova Scotians are received by them in their communities, and that government is able to respond to them. I had the opportunity on the weekend to worship in Upper Hammonds Plains at the Emmanuel Baptist Church with the congregation there. As members would recall, last week I tabled a resolution with respect to the Emmanuel Baptist Church and their pastor, Leonard J. Anderson. Leonard Anderson received national recognition for the work that he's done, taking a church with a congregation of about 40 and developing it to a place now where they're looking at a multi-million-dollar expansion just to house their congregation. To say they're overflowing at the seams would be an understatement. To say the congregation has a vigorous and vibrant grasp on the issues they face would be an understatement. They are certainly the kind of growth, the kind of hope and prosperity that we expect to see around this province, and I'm very proud of the work that Pastor Anderson has done on behalf of his congregation. He described during the church service on Sunday that they used to worship for the faithful few, and he said that, in his words, that worshiping for the faithful few is a defeatist attitude, and that it's time to start worshiping for all of Nova Scotians. They spent a great deal of time, Mr. Speaker, talking about the work that we have been doing in the Office of African and Nova Scotian Affairs Sunday, and about the fact that it's time for communities to stand up and to work towards positive solutions. And I'm pleased to say that that community is certainly showing leadership, and I'm proud to have had the opportunity to not only worship with them, but to participate with them in bringing them services and to act as their member of the legislature here in this House. Mr. Speaker, as well, I want to talk about, I spoke briefly about the success that we had, particularly with the Melnick Hall in Glace Bay, and I want to highlight to members of the legislature why that hall is so important to the African Nova Scotian community. That hall happens to be the only place east of Montreal where civil rights activist Marcus Garvey spoke. And Marcus Garvey is seen as a leader who has provided a great deal of vision and support to African Americans as well, African Canadians, and the community wanted so badly to protect that hall and to protect the significance of that hall, and we were able to intervene on their behalf with the support, I would say, of Cape Breton Regional Municipality, and particularly the Mayor John Morgan, who was able to step in and quickly saw the significance and the importance of protecting the UNIA Hall in Glace Bay. And I would say, Mr. Speaker, that is certainly a demonstration of some of the work that we've been able to do. Mr. Speaker, I don't feel compelled to list or read off to members of the legislature the meetings that we've held, but I would like to highlight a number of them. Over the past number of weeks and months, Mr. Speaker, I've had the opportunity to meet with Dwayne Provo. For those of you who are sports-minded, Dwayne Provo is an ex-NFL and CFL football player who now works as the executive director of the Black Education Association. And Dwayne Provo and I have met on a number of occasions and talked about and spoke about specific issues related to African Nova Scotians, particularly around education. And he has brought to my attention some initiatives that him and his group have brought forward, and I expect we will see opportunities in the future where the Office of African Nova Scotian Affairs will work closely with Dwayne Provo and his group to ensure that many of the concerns that they bring to government are addressed in a timely manner, and that we share opportunities with our federal counterparts, particularly the Minister of State for Heritage Canada, who I've also had the opportunity to meet with, Mr. Speaker, and she shared with me how pleased she was that Nova Scotia has made this bold step forward. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, I was absolutely surprised by the interest across the country, from coast to coast, by African Nova Scotians and by Canadians and by African Canadians in the Office of African Nova Scotian Affairs. And particularly I was surprised at the interest that we received as well internationally. I had the opportunity to meet and to speak with Special Rapporteur to the United Nations, Dudu Diane, who was here on a fact-finding mission to investigate issues, particularly with respect to Canada and as well with Nova Scotia. I had a very frank and open discussion. Members would know very clearly that Mr. Diane made a report, tabled a report not that long ago, 1 minute, with the United Nations, and provided us with a copy of that report. And I would say that Nova Scotia takes seriously the work of Mr. Diane, and we are working progressively forward with the Africville Genealogical Society, hoping to encourage our partners, particularly Halifax Regional Municipality and the federal government, in resolving what may be one of the longest-standing disputes between communities and a government in Nova Scotia's history. And I'm speaking specifically about the relocation of Africville residents. And I would point out that at a meeting that was attended by the member from Needham, as well as the federal member for Halifax-Shabukdo, and I believe that's the right riding, that we met and talked with those individuals. And I agreed at that time to host a meeting that happened on Monday, and we're progressing forward, Mr. Speaker. And I think I'm out of time, am I?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion is carried.
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Yes, Madam Chair, would you please call the estimates of the Minister of Education?
We'll just take a short.
Madam Speaker, I'd ask that we
Break.
recess for approximately 3 minutes.
3 minutes. All right. Call the committee to order. The Honourable Member from Kings West.
Madam Chair, Mr. Minister, I wanted to start off today with a question regarding early childhood education. We see a trend now across the country where there are many pre-kindergarten programs, pilots, and so forth going on with 4-year-olds. And I was wondering if there are plans in Nova Scotia, not to necessarily jump here on the bandwagon, but it certainly seems, again, an opportune time to initiate programs that, in fact, may be beneficial to our public education system and certainly to the needs of children in the province. So I'm just wondering what direction the province may be going in this regard.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm pleased that the honourable member asked that question because what he has said is something that the province has taken very seriously, and indeed the government has committed to 20 pre-primary pilots beginning in September '05. Now, I will say that there has to be negotiations with boards and also with community services in setting up a protocol for these programs, but clearly the department believes that the greater investment in the earlier years is going to have a big payoff in later years, so we will be proceeding with those pilots in September 2005, and the planning will commence very soon.
The honourable member from Kings West.
Mr. Minister, I wanted to move into an area where I certainly would like a bit more enlightenment and perhaps people throughout the province, but in particular the Southwest School Board and Tri-County situation is pending legislation where the boards will start to become more autonomous in nature. However, a proposal has been put forth to the boards, and certainly there is a number of issues that are outstanding. And I guess I'm wondering generally, has sufficient progress been made to allow this reality to come into place by October 16th?
The honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you. We continue to work with the two boards in question to see that we are indeed ready to proceed in actually the beginning of the academic year. And as the honourable member would know, there's been some reports in the media recently that things are not quite as smooth as we would hope to have them at this time, but the deputy did meet with the board chairs this morning and had a very positive meeting. He will be meeting with them again next week, and later on that week we'll be meeting with he'll be meeting with both boards, and I'm very confident that we can work out something that is going to work for everybody. I think part of it is it's sort of the proposed model is something that neither board has had the opportunity really to work in or see in action. So, you know, I think it's one of those things, once it's done, clearly there's going to be a lot of input from the partners. And then once it's there, people might even be saying, why didn't we do this before?
Member from Kings West.
I guess when I look at the size of the Strait School Board with about 9,000 students, and we look at the Southwest with about 8,500, I guess a little over 9,000 students, 8,000 something in Tri-County, that size of school board certainly seems to be one that we have already established, less than 10,000 students. Is this a question, you know, of a money consideration, why they can't have the same full jurisdiction as we currently see in a model like the Strait, where Tri-County and Southwest would both be about that size of school board?
The honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the honourable member will perhaps remember, is that there was a Southwest School Board, and that was initially set up, and there was some dissatisfaction with that board, thus the pilot arrangement that was made down in that area and in the Strait area. The decision was made that we wanted to return the boards to full educational status. Initially, when those boards were set up, there was $10 million allocated in the base sort of for administration, and it was distributed basically equally among all the boards, relatively equally among the boards. The old Southwest Board had $1 million base in the administration fund, and the decision in full separation was that that amount would not be increased. So I guess the real answer is if we put more money into administration for those boards, it means there's going to be money coming out of the classroom.
The honourable member from Kings West.
I guess I do have a concern that, you know, there's been 5 years to take a look, maybe not quite that long, at the operation of these two boards. And I think they were both hoping to move clearly in the direction of having full jurisdictional and judiciary control of their decision making is in fact some of the model that is currently being set up when we share financial and human resources. Aren't there perhaps again some inherent problems that in fact that these boards may have to continue to work through all over again?
Minister of Education.
Madam Chair, there are three things that basically will be shared, it's expected will be shared, and the honourable member mentioned two of them. The third one is informational technology, the IT sector as well. I don't think there's any doubt that the preference of each of those boards was to have total control of everything. And, you know, I guess if the province was in a better financial position, we probably would have gone ahead and just done that, because I can tell you it certainly would have saved us a considerable amount of grief and probably a considerable amount of anxiety among board members down there, because you know, within the individual boards it was, you know, they worked very hard to get their organizations to a place where they could function autonomously again, and we respected that. And indeed, there was an external review done, and it indicated that they did. Having said that, I'm not, you know, I don't have a real problem with sharing those resources, although I do recognize, I mean, it's done sort of in the health boards. When the health boards were split up, you know, they were still required to share services, and that's worked very well. I can honestly say that, you know, the health board in my area does share services, and I have never heard a complaint. You know, it does work. It's, you know, I mean, everybody likes to have their own independent thing, but, you know, sometimes what is best for many has to take precedence over what is best for a few.
Honourable member from Kings West.
One of the areas that I would like to come back to, I know this morning after meeting with the Halifax Regional School Board, certainly they drew attention to the fact that they have many schools that are now requiring considerable repairs, and we know the budget for those emergency type of repairs has been substantially reduced. And in fact, if we go around the province, we now know that there is in fact a deficiency of many millions of dollars for school repair. And I've met with, I guess, 4 of the CEOs this past year. And I'm wondering if there is indeed a long-term plan that will address some of these issues regarding the repair of school facilities.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you. The government does continue to put money into that area, and indeed, Madam Chair, I don't know if the honourable member has seen this particular document or not. It does detail the report of the Property Services Review Committee, the Education Consultative Forum, which is basically the chairs and the superintendents. So there has been some concrete work. I described our decision in the budget process this year as one which made a lot of us feel a bit uncomfortable, because to protect the interests of the classroom, that was our number one thing. And like other departments, there was a limited amount of money that was available to put into my department, and you know, by the way, the great portion of it went into public education. But so we made the decision to reduce the amount of money that was going to go into non-TCA repairs this year, and I think I described it a couple times. It was a decision basically we held our nose and made. Clearly, if we get access to more money, then it would be in my intent to boost the amount of money that is available for that budget item. I guess I just want to comment, and the honourable member would appreciate this, since the year that this government took power back in 1999, the physical condition of our school systems has been a real priority, and we have literally in those years put in about $250 million into physical plants in schools with new buildings and major renovations and repairs. So I guess the issue is, it's like the highways or the health system or community services. There was always a need for more money, but you know, our contribution this year is really in school construction is very close to $46 million. We would like to have more, but that is a significant figure.
The honourable member from Kings West.
One of the budget lines that I had noted here was seeing a $3 million increase in NSTU life, medical, and dental premiums. Now, this is a pretty considerable size dollar figure, $3 million increase, that again gets wrapped up, of course, in the fact that government says we're putting $1 billion into education. We're putting 20-something million dollars additional this year. But in my view, right now at the end of the day, when we take a look at wanting to reduce primary, we have done primary, but grade 1 class size down to 25 and combined classes to 20. Will $3.5 million be adequate provincially? We certainly heard this morning from the superintendent of Halifax School Board that the share that they have will probably mean that they will have to cut into some of the other funding. So already we don't see adequate dollars to support what I believe is an outstanding initiative of reducing class size. So our board's going to be able to cope with this additional requirement.
Minister of Education.
I think there were two questions there. I believe one had to do with the insurance coverage for NSTU members, and that additional $1.5 million it quite simply reflects an increase in benefits, the cost of benefits, and that's for NSTU contracts. And of course that would, I believe, include some of the retired teachers as well. And as the honourable member would be aware, the NSTU over the course of time has negotiated a situation where they get medical benefits. Their medical benefits continue basically sort of free of charge when they retire. And the other one was the class size initiative, and we do believe that that will be enough money. And I will tell the honourable member that there are a number of boards who had made that type of thing a priority earlier, and therefore the numbers of classes that will have to be split or the number of teachers that will have to be added, you have to take a look at the current situation in the class size, and the department has done that. We feel comfortable. Again, perhaps the superintendent from the Halifax board said I was not there, but you know, it's there'll never be quite enough, no.
The honourable member from Kings West.
One of the decrease areas is in Acadian and French language services, and again a fairly significant drop this year. So I was wondering what is the nature of change in program or delivery of those particular services.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Madam Chair, we embarked upon a pilot program this year that is 4-3.
This is first year of 4 years.
A 4-year pilot in which we have transferred the people who are responsible for the curriculum work and the French language programs over to the French School Board. So although it is a decrease in our budget, those people will continue to do the work in another sphere.
The honourable member from Kings West.
We certainly know that in terms of cost, transportation is a major one, and we now have, of course, a dual service in the province where we have boards that deliver some portion of the transportation of students, and we also have contracts with private companies that provide the service. I'm wondering if, in fact, Department of Education and government really is looking at, again, one manner of providing this service. Are they happy with the current arrangement, or is, in fact, some direction being planned for that service?
The honourable Minister of Education.
That, Madam Chair, as people know, is a decision made by the boards. The department has allowed boards to make that decision, and the bulk of the transportation is done by board employees, and there are, for example, Stock is the contractor here in Metro, and in the Chignecta Central Regional School Board, I can remember when it was the old Amalgamated Board, or the old Amalgamated Board, no, it wasn't, it was the Cumberland had its own board. It had private contractors, not a big contractor like, excuse me, like the one in the Halifax area, but a lot of people own their own buses, for example, and they provided that service. And I think down in the valley, if I'm not mistaken, there was some private transportation down there. Yeah, there was a combination of things in that, and I believe that may have been both the old and combination, but whatever seems to work, Madam Chair, we're prepared to go with, and I just want, again, to emphasize, though Halifax does contract out, we do make a grant to that board, and I suppose it's the same as if we were running it for capital replacement of buses, which I expect is passed right on to the contractor.
The honourable member from Kings West.
Go ahead. Yeah. You can go ahead.
Honourable member from Victoria, the Lakes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Minister, I'm going to focus not on what my learned colleague next to me has been doing, but focus on a situation that, with the announcement of the new school for North Sydney, the 59,892 square foot school with 11 elementary classrooms and 16 junior high classrooms. Mr. Minister, I personally don't think that that's a good decision, and I'll reference some of my personal feelings and information and experiences along those lines. I'm wondering if the cost of busing has ever been taken into consideration. It seems to be an exceedingly growing cost of the transportation of students to and from schools, and it's almost receiving now a larger priority than the actual cost of running the schools itself. And maybe the Minister could comment on the busing of the cost of busing to the schools.
The honourable Minister of Education.
Certainly, the cost of busing or transportation, continues to increase each year, and whether it's Cape Breton Victoria School Board or it's the Chignecta Central School Board, and there's always increased costs in that. You referred to the proposed new school on the north side, which is going to be a P to 9 school, and I believe that there would be 4 of the existing schools that are pretty dated and need to be replaced. And among things that government is faced with, how can you provide the best quality of education in the most efficient way? And, really it's educational programming, the type of education that is going to be received, that is probably the important thing. Now, I do understand that every community and every local neighborhood would love to have their own school. But in terms of today's practicality, folks, that's not going to happen. I can talk about my home community of Truro, where I think we've got 5 or 6 elementary schools, and we're going to be down to 2 or 3 in the next 2 or 3 years, and which means is that thing. The fact of the matter is, in some of those areas, I've been told by parents and the school advisory committee members, and by the way, not formally, but because we talk and say, well, I said, well, what do you think about that? And I said, well, I don't think it's as big a problem because about 70 or 90% of elementary kids are being transported anyway by their parents, and that's a new thing. They didn't do that when well, some years ago, probably didn't have cars or something like that, but you know, it was that didn't happen, and but it does today. That's a feature of society. More children are transported by parents or other means than they used to be. I can assure the honourable member that there are a number of P-9 schools in this province that work very, very well. And in most places, what you have is a school within a school. You know, although they're all housed in one building, that the separation between the elementary and the junior high students, or however they choose to break up the school, you know, in some cases it's a 5-2-2 and things like that, or 5-3-2, and what I've seen is that I feel pretty comfortable that most schools are able very quickly to eliminate reservations, these natural reservations that parents and others have when they see very young students going into the same building with junior high students. However, I can assure the honourable member that the experience here in Nova Scotia, we don't get pushback on that.
Honourable member from Victoria Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. The reason I raised the question about that school, not that I'm not thankful that there's a new school going there, and those schools that are being replaced are dated schools. But what my fear is that there's going to be a loss of community identity. You have the town of Sydney Mines serving a large area. You have the town of North Sydney. You're going to take the school and put it in North Sydney. Sydney Mines is going to lose its identity in that respect. Number two, there's 4 gymnasiums present now in those schools that are going to be dropped down to 1. We have the Minister of Health Promotion and putting a real push on for the children and active living. 4 gymnasiums down to 1. I know the gymnasium is a very large size, but still it's down to 1. And the community identity is one loss. The second loss is a negative economic impact in the fact that you have teachers, you have students, you have parents and guardians, you have administration coming to and from these schools for different functions throughout the day, throughout the week, and that in itself creates an economic spin-off for the local communities. What I'm looking for is, instead of a $16 million school in one community, would there be a possibility of 2 $8 million schools, 1 in each community? And that would give us that would get rid of the outdated schools, and it would at least give us a gymnasium, a cultural center, a community center, a heart in the local, both local towns.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Madam Chair, when the talk of school construction in that part of CBRM began, the proposal or the idea that the honourable member has just put on the floor was there. The thinking changed that it was better to go with a single facility, P-9, that had an oversized, a full-size gym, and would ensure that there was a critical mass to offer all of the educational services that parents want. But on the other hand, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, until that school is actually under construction, if the school board was to come to us and say, we've changed our mind, we would like something else, then clearly we're always prepared to listen, and as the honourable member would just take the experience when the decision was made to make the new Halifax build the new Halifax West High School. That was because the board came to us and there were options that could be worked out that were good. And, you know, it has to be financially feasible, too. I mean, there's no more money. So people have to understand that.
The honourable member from Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. And as when you've referenced your own town of Truro, of reducing the number of schools, but there still will be 2 or 3, or even if there was one large school, it would still be in Truro. The same with Halifax, it's still within HRM. So there's no loss of identity there, and that is a significant factor. But what I'm wondering also, and I've always referenced a rural area like Margaree down in Cape Breton, a very rural area that appears on all statistics that I can come up with. There's been more professionals come from that rural area, to my knowledge, than most any other areas, simply because I don't know if they do it better, if there's less societal pressures in a rural area or what. But I always reference that area when I'm referring to something because I personally don't think that big is always better when it comes to building this school. I'm wondering, you're saying when the decision was made, this is a decision that was made by the school board, from what I understand the way you're saying. Was there any public consultation with students, parents, administrators? Did everybody come together and make this agreement, or did the school board decide that this is where it was going to go? Maybe you could answer that for me, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Education.
The process, Madam Chair, is that the school capital construction report was made. We worked on the basis of that, and there would be negotiations ongoing with the school board from that point to end up where we are at the present time.
Honourable member from Victoria the Lakes.
I just would like to re-emphasize the fact that when I placed a motion, a resolution before the House today, and kind of praising the children from the rural schools. Bulledry Elementary and Berdore Elementary are second to none with their student and their programs and whatnot. And given today's societal influences, I don't feel comfortable with somebody in grade 7, 8, or especially 9 having access to children from P to 6 and giving the problems, like I said, in society. I think they're more easily controlled for the benefit of the students if an elementary school is an elementary school and a junior high is a junior high. But given the fiscal restraints, I would still ask the minister that if he wouldn't mind, when I return to Cape Breton, if I make the suggestion to the school board or to the school board members that the possibility be considered of, like I said, there's no more money, so would there be a possibility of an $8 million school in both communities rather than just one in one central location? Maybe the minister could allow me that permission or whatever to go there and do that. And if there's a positive response from the school board or a change of heart, maybe you would change your mind also, Mr. Minister.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Madam Chair, I would love to have the ability to direct the actions of the MLAs on the other side of the House. But you know, that of course, obviously quite seriously, that is a matter for him as an MLA.
The Honourable Member from Victoria the Lakes.
Madam Chair, I'm going to now turn the questioning over to the Honourable Member from Glace Bay.
The Honourable Member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pleasure, as always, to be able to ask the Minister some questions before estimates. It's an area that I had some experience in when I served as the education critic for the Liberal caucus for a period of time, but it was under a different minister, so I'm sure that the minister and I would have gotten along a lot better than the previous minister and I got along on several occasions. So, and I'm not even talking about the current health minister now, who you used to be the health minister at that. Well, it's anyway, it gets mixed up even from there. You know, hard for one to follow the lives of ministers on the other side. Let me get serious for a moment, though, Madam Chair. I wanted to talk about one of the items that, when I was education critic for the Liberal caucus, one of the items that we did discuss with the minister was that, and as serious a problem I don't know you could ever find in this province, one of declining enrollments, and one that affects a number of areas across the province, but which is of particular concern to my area in Cape Breton and to Cape Breton in general, because as the minister would well know, the Cape Breton-Victoria Regional School Board faces a severe problem of declining enrollments. There are some 600 less students who are in the school system this year in Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board. And next year, unfortunately, the projections show that there will be some 600 less students again in the Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board at home. So as we all know, Madam Chair, in this case, the funding follows students in the province of Nova Scotia. So if that funding is following students, it's following less students. It goes without saying in Cape Breton, which means that the schools in Cape Breton, per capita basis, I would say, would be generally much less funded than the schools on the mainland, certainly than an area compared to let's say, the metro area in Halifax, Dartmouth, which is experiencing somewhat of a population explosion when it comes to when it comes to this area. So my question is, and in particular to the minister, because this was a promise that was contained in your government's Blue Book in 1999, that there would be something specifically done concerning areas that were affected by declining enrollments in this province. And what I would like to know, in a couple of areas, I would like to know, in the minister's opinion, what has been done to date, what's going to be done in the future to address that problem. And you know, I'm not certainly asking the minister to have all of the answers to things such as out-migration on Cape Breton or the general problems that we are suffering from there. But what I would like to know from the Minister of Education is exactly how he foresees the future in funding the school system in Cape Breton, faced with a devastating scenario such as you're losing 600 students almost on a yearly basis. Where do you think that will end up, and how do you see the funding problem being taken care of in Cape Breton, Mr. Minister?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank the honourable member for the question, and he does present a Nova Scotian phenomenon. And of course, we're into the baby boomer years. We had the reverse phenomena, and we had to build all kinds of schools and hire all kinds of teachers to accommodate. So, but you know, in 1997-98, Madam Chair, just to illustrate what the member is talking about, the Cape Breton Victoria School Board had just about 23,400 students. And it's projected in 2008-2009 that that's going to have decreased somewhere to around 15,700. Certainly, percentage-wise or anything else, a tremendous drop, which meant that the school board up there has had some really difficult decisions to make. And by the way, I just want to compliment that board. They have really, I think, done a superb job in dealing with that really awkward situation of having great declines in enrollment year by year. I guess, Madam Chair, I will say that the funding formula is probably about 25% student-based right now. So, although funding does follow students, you know, there is a significant amount of the money that is allocated to school boards is not based on students. There are a lot of other factors in there. The 75% was fixed basically on 1996 enrollment. So we've got a base year which actually goes back for the Cape Breton Victoria School Board when they probably would have had around 24,000 students. So really that's, the funding does take that into consideration. In addition, Madam Chair, the department is honoring one of its commitments in 2005. We will have that designated rural school up and running. For example, there are some schools in this province, and I'm reluctant to name them, but Just give you an example of a couple where, they have to continue, like, the school down in Advocate Harbor, small school. You've got up in Meat Cove, up in your area, these schools, way north, well, whatever it is, and there are some that's Rodney's, isn't it? Excuse me, Minister McDonald's. Forgot about. Yeah. Anyway, no, but just indicating that there are rural schools, really, and it's, I could go back a little bit. One time they used to have a school in Pictou Island, but they don't have a school in Pictou Island anymore. But they do have somebody who teaches the eight or nine students there. But what I'm saying is that in addition to that initiative, Madam Chair, is that later on this spring, we have a person who is engaged to review the funding formula, Mr. Bill Hogg, and we expect a preliminary report from him in November. That report will then go out to the boards and come back in, and we'll finally, hopefully, have a final report by, very early in 2005. But that funding formula, that's his task, to review the funding formula and to make adjustments to provide reasonable equity across the province.
Honourable member from Glace Bay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think I used to get straighter answers for the former member from Halifax Citadel. At least they were direct, and you could understand them. Anyway, I'm confused, but let me backtrack for a minute and remind the minister, who says there are some 7,700 less students in Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board since the 90. He said since around 98, 97, 98, approximately. Yeah, okay, all right. Those are older, those are outdated figures, is what the minister is telling me. 08, 09? Okay, anyway, there's, tremendous amount, thousands less students in Cape Breton than there was at that time period. There are over 30-some schools, if I'm not mistaken, 30-some schools that were closed in Cape Breton in that time. So what we're looking at, and I agree, I agree with the minister. The board has done a pretty darn good job in this case, but the board has also faced some pretty tough opposition from parents and from pupils and so on back home, who just throw their hands up in the air in total frustration and exasperated over the fact that, the board says we're not getting the funding for it, we don't have the money, because the funding follows students. I know there's a base funding there that's allotted to that board, as there is any other board throughout the province. But because schools have closed in the past and the services have been reduced, because that funding that follows students is no longer there. And again, I remind the minister that it was in the Blue Book in 1999 that there would be special attention paid to areas that were suffering from declining enrollments. That was one of the very exact promises that was made in the Blue Book by the Tory government. And again, what I asked the minister was, and by the way, those 30-some schools don't include the one that sank into the ground in Dominion and is now closed. That was another unfortunate, tragic event that happened that maybe if I have the time I can ask the minister for a couple of questions on that as well. But before I get to that, those schools that closed, those students that have gone, they've left the area, how does it directly affect the operation of the Cape Breton Victoria District School Board? And again, what has been done to meet that promise that's in the Blue Book? What specifically has been done for this area, for the Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board, to handle the problem of declining enrollments?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
I guess the direct answer to that is that when the board was required to do this with a fairly greater degree of seriousness, they were given $1.5 million transition fund to help them through it. And in addition, the reduction in funding is less than the proportionate reduction to class size. I'm sorry to
The Honourable,
rephrase that. It's less than the proportion of the percentage reduction of student population.
Honourable Member from Glace Bay.
So, Madam Chair, is the minister telling me that things are better now in Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board than they were back when there were 23,400 students? Do they get as much funding now as they did back then? And are things as good in terms of funding as they were back when there were that many more students than there are in the system right now?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
What I can tell the honourable member is that the funding to school boards has increased each year.
The Honourable Member from Glace Bay.
Well, Madam Chair, specifically, that's the funding for the minister is saying every school board across this province got an increase in their funding. Specifically, in areas that suffer from declining enrollment, of which Cape Breton is certainly, I would suspect, probably the prime one in this province. That areas that suffer from declining enrollment, which was, again, a promise contained in the 1999 Blue Book of the Tory government that something would be done specifically to help those areas of declining enrollment. Aside from a general increase which was given to other school boards across this province, what has been done specially and specifically for the Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board to help combat the problem of declining enrollment?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Specifically, Madam Chair, there was $1.5 million given to that school board, and as they were into that transition, and they were allowed 3 years to make the transition. So, getting from there to where they are now, the province did recognize that and did financially assist the board.
The Honourable Member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What the minister is telling me then is that $1.5 million, that transition funding that was given to them, was supposed to be what was specifically promised in the Blue Book promise. That was what was given to that area to specifically combat declining enrollments. Was $1.5 million is supposed to solve all of your problems regarding declining enrollments. Is that what the minister is telling me?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Sure, that's $1.5 million was transition fund. But the other thing, the honourable member, and I think he probably would remember this because he probably asked the question last year, that there are in some ways two funding formulas in Nova Scotia, and whereas you get some boards criticizing the government on the basis of the formula, but Cape Breton board is still sort of being funded on the old formula, which is to an advantage of that board compared, let's say, to another area where the population decrease has not been as great or even increased.
The Honourable Member from Glace Bay.
Well, it's not Madam Chair. The minister is saying that the Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board gets special treatment to its advantage, then certainly the superintendent of the Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board and school board members and the chair of the school board certainly haven't relayed that to me, that they're getting special treatment. If anything, what they told me the message to bring here was that they need more money because of the serious declining enrollment problem. But the minister is saying that they get special treatment from other boards around here, and that's because of declining enrollment? Madam Speaker, let me give the minister this opportunity to clarify that statement.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Madam Chair, if the honourable member has listened to the debate right around the province, you will find that Cape Breton Victoria School Board is not alone in indicating that they could use more money. All boards are saying that, and indeed they can. What I am saying is that in recognition of the declining enrollment in that Cape Breton Victoria area was one of the reasons that the money is allocated to them the way it is was in recognizing that situation. Now, in no way did I try and indicate that was going to mean they didn't have to make some difficult decisions. That's not my point. I'm simply saying that had the department not made that decision, then there would have been a lot more difficult decisions to make.
The Honourable Member from Glace Bay.
Well, Madam Chair, you know, if the minister knows that in the Blue Book of 1999, it was specifically pointed out that areas that suffer from declining enrollment in this province would indeed be helped by this government. Now, I don't know if that's what the minister is talking about here when he says special treatment or whatever the case may be, but this is exactly what that government promised, not just Cape Breton, but any area in this province that suffered from declining enrollments would get the help of that government to take on the serious problem of declining enrollments. I wouldn't see that as being special treatment. I would see that as being fulfilling a promise that was made by the Tory government, one that I suggest right now has not been fulfilled, because still the Cape Breton District School Board has a funding problem on its hands, and they're losing 600 students every year, Mr. Minister, which means that they eventually have got to get to the point where they're going to say we're going to have to close more schools in this school board. It's the only solution that they'll have. Having made that point, and I know I don't have much time left, Madam Chair, it's probably around 6 or 7 minutes, 6 minutes that I have left. 10 minutes? Good. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take the 7 minutes. Okay. Kind of sounds like the minister changing his mind on a couple of items. But anyway, let me get to this item before we get back perhaps to declining enrollments, and that being, as I mentioned, the 30-some schools that closed over the past, can I say 6 years plus in Cape Breton? There have been 30-some schools that have closed. Not among that count was Dominion School, Dominion High School in Dominion. And I'd like to ask the minister this day his opinion of the Dominion situation and whether or not a new school should be built for the people of Dominion.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, and I want to tell the honourable member that I met with the people in Dominion, and they are a very sincere group, and they would really like to have a new junior high back in their community. The fact is that it is not on the priority list of the board, and therefore the decision, our position on that has really not changed. But I just want to say, and I've said before, is that the priority for our government was to see that the students got quality education. And there are students from Dominion, the junior high, the high school students are either going into Breton Education Centre in New Waterford, which was a fine school that clearly had about twice as much capacity as it had students. There are students who've opted to go into the new relatively new Glace Bay High School, and the junior high students, I believe, did go into either St. Mike's or Morrison High in Glace Bay.
Honourable member from Glace Bay.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the record, that's Morrison Junior High. I graduated from Morrison High a long time ago. Never mind. No need for comment on that, Madam Chair. We'll leave it at that. Again, my question to the minister, and I think the minister knows that was a rather special and tragic incident to that community when Dominion High School suffered from subsidence that was there. And I think the minister knows that it had an effect on the community, not only from a school viewpoint, but also because the school served as somewhat of a community center for the community, and the gymnasium was used for various events in the community and so on and so forth. And I know there had been several proposals that had been tossed around. At that time, I met with the parents of the Dominion area as well, and if the minister has met with them, then good for him. But I would think at this point in time that one of the things that has always been discussed has been whether or not the Department of Education should have some sort of emergency funding, some sort of emergency contingency plan that would happen in the event of this ever happening again. And it's a very real possibility in Cape Breton. It's a very real possibility where in the area that I live, because some of the schools have already been identified, I should say, by government as being located on top of old mine workings and could suffer, not that they necessarily will, but could suffer from subsidence, hopefully they never will, but it could possibly happen in the future. So my question to the minister is, if there had been if there had been some sort of contingency plan, a contingency fund, call it what you wish, an emergency fund, some sort of insurance to cover for this eventuality happening. There's insurance for fires at schools, I would imagine. Schools are covered by floods, they're covered by accident insurance, and so on. Has the department taken a look at the possibility of insuring the schools in that area against any future subsidence, against anything, or had they looked at establishing an emergency or contingency fund that possibly could be set up so that we wouldn't be having this discussion in the future regarding another school?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
There was a study done up in that area on schools that could possibly be that were built in areas that have some that have mine workings underneath them, and fortunately, Madam Chair, for a lot of people is that the other schools have not been affected. Unfortunately, for the people who live in the Dominion area, there was a problem with it at a high school, and it just was not safe to leave the students in it. The province, you say a contingency fund. The answer, I guess, is yes, because we dealt with blown off roofs and oil spills and things like that, but we don't have, a high school type of contingency fund. I would suggest, and I say this quite seriously, Madam Chair, is that I suspect that he has been to see his federal MLAs. I think the coal mines were a federal responsibility. And, he may wish to approach his MPs to see what their view on this is. The issue of subsidence is not an insurable risk, and therefore there was no insurance for the McDonald School because of subsidence. Now, in terms of emergency, and I think you have to put that in context, fortunately, as unfortunate as it was, is there was that school became non-functional, or at least not safe to function in. There was lots of school capacity in the immediate area, so the quality of education for those students should not have been abnormally affected once you got over the issue of moving. Now, I can tell you that we have had other situations in the province where students have had to move during the school year and have had to go into split shifts, and my understanding is that was not an issue for the people in Dominion. So, I have a great deal of empathy, and I want to tell you that when I met with the group of parents and teachers from that school, the presentation that they made was exemplary. They made an exceptional presentation to me, and they did their homework, and clearly this was something that came from their hearts.
Oh, the Honourable Member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know I don't have much time left at all. I remind the Minister that, the continual whining that we hear from the other side of this legislature about blame it on Ottawa, blame it on Ottawa. The last time I checked, education was the responsibility of the province of Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Member from Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to rise today and speak to the Minister of Education. So I have some questions for the Minister of Education today. The Minister, I've just realized just recently the government had appointed Mr. Keith Bain to the Cabinet Office in Prince Street to work for the government. And Mr. Keith Bain is actually the Cape Breton Victoria School Board chairperson. I'm just vice chairperson of the Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board. I'm just wondering, will Mr. Bain be advising the Minister on school board activity or on government activity?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
School board members come from a variety of backgrounds and have a variety of positions, including some of them they are unemployed, or they are host husbands or host wives or single persons. To my knowledge, there are very few school board members that You'd be surprised the number of people who might work for the Department of Health or the Department of Community Services or the Department of Transportation or perhaps be a town employee, the numbers of people who serve on serve on school boards and other agencies, boards, and commissions. I think if we were to examine the backgrounds, we might find that they come from every sector of our population. Clearly, Mr. Bain, if he is meeting with me as a school board member, then will be meeting with me as a school board member. And I can tell you as well, like all other school board members, there are elections upcoming this fall. And I have no idea whether he intends to continue or not continue or anything else.
The honourable member from Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you. That was very well explained. Thank you very much. I'm just wondering that. I'm just wondering, like, it just seems to me, I don't know if it's a conflict or something, but regular members of the school board may be a little bit nervous at this time, realizing that they have somebody working for the government sitting at the table when it comes to recommending funding or whatever happens in the school board, especially when a school board like this, well, is it a conflict of interest? I've asked myself that question. Well, maybe the minister, would it be a conflict of interest that Mr. Bain works for the school board as an elected official for the school board and works for the cabinet office? Thank you.
Honourable Minister of Education.
From my broad experience in government is that I understand that the constituency assistant of one of the Cape Breton MPs is on that board as well, and I'm not sure whether that person would be in a conflict. And I can tell you, too, that in terms of the Capital District Health Authority, when he was appointed, a very good member of that board, he's still there, was the president of the Liberal Party of Nova Scotia. Now, maybe he had a conflict, too, I don't know. But I want to tell you, he was an exceptionally and continues to be an exceptionally fine board member.
The honourable member from Cape Breton Nova.
Well, I'm hoping that this gentleman is going to be an exceptionally fine board member also, even though he's working at a new job for $46,000 a year in the provincial building. Mr. Minister. Okay, now let's get down to some items, Mr. Minister. We're all talking about the outward migration of Cape Breton students and people in Cape Breton, and the enrollment in the school board has been down. We all know that's well documented. And know that the funding formula is based on the number of students, and you say that the Cape Breton Regional Victoria School Board is different funding formula, but maybe the minister can answer me. The Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board has is the third largest school board in the province, but receives the second lowest funding in the province. Maybe the minister can explain to me how that happens.
The honourable Minister of Education.
Madam Chair, could I ask the member to repeat that question, because it took me off balance, because it seems to be reflecting something that I didn't think was so. So I'm going to have to make sure I understood it.
From Cape Breton Nova.
What I'm saying is that the Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board has the third largest school board in the province of Nova Scotia, but yet it receives the second lowest funding in the province.
The honourable Minister of Education.
I can tell you,
It's not the second.
I think the information you have perhaps is dated or something like that. It's certainly not consistent with the information I have, but I will tell you this, that the Cape Breton Victoria School Board has about 13.1% of the enrollment, yet gets about 13.8% of the funding. And I will, I can contrast that to a couple of other boards that are a different thing, but just if the honourable member will be patient, I'm going to look at that.
They are, in terms of funding, it's 1, 2, 3.
The funding projected for 0405, and these are rough numbers: Halifax $301 million, Chignecto Central, which is about $145 million, and then the numbers that I have, actually the third highest is Cape Breton Victoria at 115.5. So it's a little different than what you had presented.
The honourable member from Cape Breton Nova.
Okay, definitely. I'll be reflecting on those numbers, I guess, to have a look at that. But I'm really, the consensus seems to be that education was the government's second priority, as I recall in this budget. 22 million in extra funding to public education, about 20 million of that going to be shared among the school boards, Mr. Minister. Overall, there was an increase of roughly 34 million and reductions of about 10 millions when you crunch the numbers, I guess, all total. A 7.5 million increase to funding Learning for Life initiatives, 3.5 million to reduce class sizes, 3 million increase in special needs funding, 2.5 million to be used to fund core professionals, reading recovery assistive teachers. 500,000 will go towards special education pilot projects, and an additional 1 million will go towards assisting struggling readers. I'm just trying to figure out what is the municipal education levy is being questioned, I think, at this point, and the province and the municipalities appear to be using different assessment roles. Would there be any explanation of what roles or the province is using to assessment, or the difference between the assessment roles for the municipalities and the province?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Madam Chair, the mandatory municipal funding is based on property assessments which are done through the Department of Service, Nova Scotia Municipal Relations. Now, those aren't finalized. You know, they wouldn't be finalized until after this budget is passed. So the budget is really based on a preliminary assessment, and you're probably going to find some assessment changes, as the honourable member would know, as a result of appeals. But I can tell you that the rate has been set at 35.1 or 0.351, and boards were advised of that orally in January, and again, so the number is no surprise. The actual amount of dollars that is going to be generated, of course, is still a bit iffy. Well, minorly, because we're not going to get a huge swing in that. But the education rate has gone down twice in the last 5 years, and I believe the honourable member would be aware of that. And the changes in assessments really aren't reflected in a change from the budgeted rate. So,
The Honourable Member from Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I'm looking at some other stuff here when I was looking in the book, Mr. Minister. Acadian and French language services down 130,000. And I'm looking on page 6.6. Learning resources and technology cut by 1.5 million from 6.2 million to 4.7 million. Also, I think I was here and I listened to the minister, I think yesterday when he was speaking there on the bus funding cut from 4.1 to 3.1. And I did hear your explanation there yesterday to the member, one of my colleagues, on the being able to purchase buses as a whole Atlantic region rather than, and I think that's pretty well. But Mr. Minister, I'm just looking at, I would like to switch now to the Black Learners Advisory Committee and the report that came in, I think it was 1994 when this report comes in. And I see in the budget there, this year, the report, 500,000 invested this year into that report, Mr. Minister. But there's still, I mean, I thought it was supposed to be $4 million. Maybe you can clear me up on this. So that would leave still 3.5 million left to be implemented in this report, Mr. Minister. At this rate, it will be 2011 before this report gets fully implemented. And an African Nova Scotia student that was born in 1993, when the report was authored, will be out of the public education system graduated from grade 12 by the time that this whole report, at this rate, at 500,000, that person will be graduated. I mean, that's, it seems like, you know, there's 3.5 million left to be implemented. Could the minister tell me how come this report is being or when it's going to be, all the funding is going to be implemented, and why is it so slow? As it maybe just seems to me, when I figured that out, at that rate of funding, that when the report was done in 93, the person would be gone and be graduated out of that. So maybe you could explain to me why the BLAC report is being so slowly implemented into the school process. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
thank the honourable member for that series of questions. Let me begin with the difference in the Acadian or the French language programs, and as I have said, the reason for that amount of reduction in the Department of Education budget is that we entered a 4-year pilot with the French language school board, in which the curriculum development responsibilities are being transferred to them. So you'll find that the grant to that board has been increased by an amount basically equivalent to the decrease in the department's line item there. The CAP is going to get roughly about an additional $500,000, I think actually about 490 doing that thing. You've also talked about the implementation of the Black Report, and this government made a commitment during the term of its government to implement as well a considerable portion of that, and we've committed to that end, $4.1 million over a 4-year period. So we have been able to, as you know, like any of those projects, when you are committing money, you want it to be used in the best possible way. We were not able to commit the whole thing up front, but you know, the government will keep its promise that $4.1 million will be there over the course of our mandate, 4 years.
Member from Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you very much. It just seems like it's very slow acting for the report to be around for that. And I remember just getting newly elected when they came here to give an update on that report here in the legislature, and we all gave them a standing ovation from the Black Learners Association. And I think that maybe some more fast action on that would be appropriate, because a lot of the students are not graduating, and I don't quite know the ratio to make that comment, but there seems to be social and economical factors in my riding where a lot of the African Nova Scotian students are having some problems. I was just wondering also, can I have a look at or maybe the minister could tell me, here's a question, that the new school construction, upcoming new school construction and renovations, could you please give me a list of the new schools that are going to be built in the upcoming 2004-2005, please, if that's okay? A list of the new schools?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The schools which are scheduled to open this year are in December. We have Amherst Elementary and the Cumberland Elementary. The Shelburne Regional High School, the new high school down there, should open hopefully in September. The East Pictou High School is open now. The Rankin Memorial School will not open until May in '05. That was initially scheduled to, was in that initial list for this year, but as I think the honourable member well knows, the difficulties with power and whatnot that kind of delayed that project. The South Colchester High, which is in Brookfield, is open. The Sydney Elementary should open in September. The Truro Junior High should open in September. And West Pictou and Windsor High are now open, although there is still a little bit of money for all of those projects to be expended in odds and ends. The schools that will be started this year, in this fiscal year, include the Barrington High School, scheduled to open in September '05. The Hammonds Plains Elementary School, again in September '05. The Harborside Robert Jameson School in September '06. The St. Pat's Queen Elizabeth, the new school in Halifax, September '06. There is an elementary school in Truro that is scheduled to open in January of '06. And the new Western HRM High School is scheduled to open in September '06, and the total price of those packages last year and this year is roughly about $46 million.
The honourable member from Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I just wondered where the new school construction was for Iona, the state-of-the-art school that was going to be completed by September '04. Maybe the minister can explain where the new school is for Iona.
The honourable Minister of Education.
Yeah. I just want to make one thing clear. Madam Chair, in my response to the last question, I used the figure of approximately $46 million. That is money that was expended this year. The projects obviously add up to be a lot more than that. The Iona School is scheduled to open in May '05. The reason for that was the schools require three-phase power to operate effectively. There was not three-phase power on the island, so some engineering, well, they had to make some engineering changes, some adjustments, and that was one of the major reasons, was trying to ensure that there would be, that the school, there was no sense building a school that could not function if the appropriate service was not there, so there was a delay.
The honourable member from Cape Breton Nova.
Okay, no, I kind of figured when I asked him that, it was just, I didn't hear him say Iona, and I was wondering what the delay was, and he explained it. But the minister said three-phase power in the island. I'm pretty sure we do have some three-phase power in the CBRM, Mr. Minister. Thank you very much for that answer. I appreciate that. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the Big Island, our beautiful Big Island. So, too much power, yeah. Mr. Minister, there was just the SERIRC report in 2001 called for the immediate injection of $20 million into the education in here. I just find that when I'm back home and I hear from the students at UCCB, I find that, you know, the students graduating this year, an average death of about 21,794. And some of the students are saying that by the time they graduate and finish in 2005 and 2006, that their depth of for education would be around 42,000. I find that quite high today for many students. I just wanted to know, you know, that seems very high, and I find it that, in my opinion, I think that people in low-income families, I find that their children are going to not be able to access quality education in higher institutes in this province because of that gap between the have-nots and the haves of the province, I guess, and kids and families and that. So I guess I'll move on to another question from the minister. Is the minister says that there's the department says there's 4,500 students on individual and program plans, and that 1% to 2% will qualify, but there's only enough funding for this for 1%, and that would only cover 45 students in the for the actual plan. For what I'm reading, Mr. in my notes here, is that to establish and let's see, to do with special needs students. Is there any extra money this year in the budget for special needs students in the education budget this year, Mr. Minister?
I'd like to thank the member for the question, and I'd like at this time to recognize the Minister of the Department of Education.
There's about $3 million additional dollars in the budget this year, and that was over and above the additional three. When did last year?
3.5 last year.
That was in addition to the 3.5 that went in last year. So over the last 2 years, in terms of new money, if you stack it, last year was 3.5. This year it's 6.5.
Thank you for your answer, Minister. Now I would like to recognize the member from Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at the same, at saying that $3 million for special. At the same time, we cut the resources and technology program. Is this through by $1.5 million?
Thank you for the question. Recognize the Minister of the Department of Education.
Chairman, just before I move to that one, I had indicated in response to the last question that it was $3.5 million invested in Learning for Life last year. It was 2.5, so that went into the base, so the additional 3 is on top of that, so it's 5.5 rather than 6.5.
Thank you.
The information technology, that involves hardware, software, and professional development, and that was decreased as we get into the budget process, and again, it was an issue of limited financial resources. Where can we continue to protect the priorities of government, which are reading, writing, and math, We have high-speed internet in every school. Again, something that we did not want to do, but when you have to make choices, we felt that that choice would allow more resources to flow into the classroom. And to be quite frank, a fair bit of that money was scheduled to be used in professional development. And one of the things that I think I made the observation yesterday, that there would be, I think it would be the odd person who would be employed by a school board now that is a recent graduate from a teacher training program or from a university or wherever it happens to be, that would not have considerable computer skills. And this program, there's no question that the in-service is desiring, but I really think that the people are a little bit better prepared in that area coming in to the schools than certainly they were just a few years ago.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton, Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. And going back to the question before that, and you said that there was $2.5 million the year before and $3 million put into the, so make it a total of $5.5 million that was injected in the last 2 years and that. Now, this new bit of money, the $3 million that was injected this year, that the department has promised injected this year, about $1.5 million of that new special needs funding will go to the HRSB, and the other 1.5 will be divided among the other school boards. Could you please explain to me how that's going to be done, Mr. Minister, please?
Thank you, member, for your question, and I'll direct that to the Minister of the Department of Education.
Just clarification on his first point, it would be an additional $8 million because there was 2.5 given last year. That was into the base, so 2.5 plus the 3 would make 8. So as to that, and the other question.
How's it going to help? That was agreed to by the superintendents. The biggest problem for class size, and that was in Metro, initially.
Okay, the class size initiatives were agreed to by the superintendents. The largest problem appeared to be in the Metro area, and that was for the reading recovery money?
Yep, this year all Metro.
The reading recovery money that came basically into Metro this year to the exclusion of the other districts as they were ahead of Metro.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Cape Breton, Nova.
Thank you. Mr. Minister, I think I'm slowly running out of questions here. I may have a couple of more left here as I looked at some of this here. I was looking at, I looked at that, I'm just looking. Okay, we discussed the size of the, but the outward migration of students is a problem. I just wonder in the formula, when you decide the formula per students compared to teachers, Mr. Minister, the principal and the vice principal, they're in this formula as long as included in this formula, and I just find, and I know that that's been the way it is, that they're actually teacher-student ratio, the vice principal and the principal are included. Is this true that they are included in the funding formula?
Thanks for the question, and direct that to the Minister of the Department of Education.
Yes, the administrators are included in that, and that's the practice right across the country.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Cape Breton, Nova.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Minister. And I do seem to have a little bit of issue with that, but that's the way it is, I guess. And I just think that when they're funding the formula for actual people that are teaching, I don't think that the administration should be a part of that formula, but that's just the way it is. I am winding down now, Mr. Chair, and I would like to pass off my time that I have left to my colleague from Dartmouth North, Mr. Jerry Pye.
Yes, and thank you very much for your questioning this afternoon. And now I'd like to recognize the member from Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for allowing me to have a couple of minutes. Mr. Minister, my issues will be specific to constituency. And primarily the issue is with respect to maybe some correspondence if the Minister's Department has had. As you know, there is the potential for the Shannon Elementary School to become a part of the Halifax Regional School Board, and because at the present time it is within the Department of National Defence's purview, that in fact there needs to be a negotiating process going on with the Department of National Defense with respect to acquiring a portion of that school, because my understanding is a part of that school was in fact built at smaller scale. If it was built by the former Dartmouth District School Board at that particular time, but there was an add-on which in fact is a part of the property of the Department of National Defense. Now, as you know, the Shannon Park has actually closed. There are no residents living there and so on, and the school will become surplus to the needs of the Department of National Defense. So my question to you, Mr. Minister, is, has the Halifax Regional School Board had conversation with you seeking your input with the Department of National Defense on acquiring or purchasing Shannon Elementary School?
Thank you for the question. I recognize the Minister of the Department of Education. Minister.
Yes, Chairman, the department has had contact with the Halifax School Board about that school and the land, and it's quite a complex process over there, because the honourable member just mentioned that part of it belonged here and part of it belonged there. I just hope that negotiation does not take as long as it did to acquire the Greenswood School.
Thank you for the answer, Minister. Recognize the member from Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the minister indicated that there was negotiations going on, but he didn't say where the process of those negotiations are, or what stage in time those negotiations are. If in fact the minister's office is still required to communicate with the federal department on behalf of the regional school board, or if in fact the minister has sent a directive to the school board to allow the school board to carry on that negotiations. Because as the minister said, it is an extremely complex issue. It's an issue that needs to be addressed rather quickly, because in fact there is a whole host of issues surrounding the Shannon Park lands, and we need to know as quickly as possible where the status of the educational facility is. I'm not interested with respect to the parcels of land and everything, because that's going to go through a company called the Canada Lands Company that's going to acquire the rights to sell the property from the Department of National Defense on behalf of the federal government, and that in itself will take a long, drawn-out process. And that's the unfortunate part of the complexity of this, is although this process will take a long, protracted road, the need for the school and the school to be at least a part of the Halifax Regional School Board's facilities for education is extremely important. So if the minister could elaborate just exactly where his department and where his department is and how his department is involved in some of the negotiating processes, then I would be pleased.
The Minister of the Department of Education.
Mr. Chair and the honourable member, we are negotiating directly with the DND and the Canada Land Company for that facility. I will give you an update on that process, and I will have to get staff to draw up a note on it. But one of the things that may be encouraging is that I'm advised that we expect to be able to purchase that property or have the purchase completed in 5 months.
Thank you, Minister. Now I would like to recognize the member from Dartmouth North.
Well, I wanna thank the honourable minister, because that's very timely. 5 months, I believe, will move it up. Well, what is that, to October of this year? The school year starts in September, but nonetheless, the school year will continue to go on, regardless if the school is purchased or not. But after the provincial government, which I say is timely and gracious of the provincial government to be actively involved in the negotiations of this, because that is in fact moving it rather quickly when you're dealing with the federal government, particularly on lands and facilities. So that is good news. However, the news is that once it becomes in the domain of or the property of the Nova Scotia Department of Education, will it then be given over, handed over to the Halifax Regional School Board to use as a facility as long as it's in the school board's domain again? And again, once it becomes surplus to the school board, it obviously will revert back to the province. I guess that might be some of the process that might happen.
Thank you for the question. Direct that question to the Minister of the Department of Education.
The member has laid it out just about precisely. When we acquire the property, we will be turning it over to the school board, and when it becomes surplus to their needs, I expect it will be turned back to us.
Thank you. Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And like I said, the kind of questions that I will be asking our constituency, and they're somewhat brief. The other question is around the constituency issue is with respect, the minister knows that here a couple years ago there were a number of school closures in the constituency of Dartmouth North. Very difficult school closures that in fact happened because a number of schools actually closed at that particular time. A number of the student population had been shifted to different schools within the boundaries of the family of schools of Dartmouth High. And as a result of that, there seems to be a potential growth in the population, the student community, because of new developments, residential developments, growing in that constituency. And my question to you, Minister, is has the Halifax Regional School Board asked the Department of Education to do an evaluation and assessment on building a new school in the Dartmouth North constituency, and I mean a school of a P6 school, simply because many of the schools are aged, and as I've said, expected increase in student population in that age range.
The Minister, Department of Education.
The honourable member knows his constituency very well, educational matters, and he's right about the situation that happened a couple of years ago, but we have not received any requests from the Halifax School Board for a new school up to this point.
Thank you, Minister. The member from Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and I must say that I'm a bit disappointed in that because knowing the age of many of those schools in the Dartmouth North constituency, that there has not been a request. But that's an issue that obviously this MLA can take to the local regional school board, and the local regional school board then has to inform me as to why there was not a request. So that's important. I want to go to the community colleges, particularly the I.W. Akerley Community College. Now, I do know that the Minister of Natural Resources, the former Minister of Natural Resources, when he was there in the legislature, made the announcement or assisted in the announcement with the Minister of Education with respect to the building of a new community college in Dartmouth. And that new community college will now be situated on a new site overlooking the Halifax Harbour and hopefully adding to and attracting new developments to the Dartmouth side of the harbour, particularly as the student population migrates there. My question to you, Mr. Minister, is that will take the student population away from the existing I.W. Akerley Community College, or it's my belief that that's what will happen. When in fact that occurs, will there be a name change to the community college, or will the name of I.W. Akerley continue to be the name of the new community college?
Excuse me. The Minister of the Department of Education.
Mr. Chair, that's not a matter that has come up before us at this time. You know, I'm sure that the Community College Board and those with community would, if they wish to name change, would make it, but we've not received nor any request, and we certainly haven't thought about making one. So,
thank you, Minister. I'd like to recognize the member from Dartmouth North. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, that's the reason why I raised it, is because to the minister, as you know, Mr. Akerley played an important role in the growth of the city of Dartmouth, and is a very important founder to the city. As a matter of fact, he was there when the city was a town. and actually through its annexation of the outlying areas at that particular time, played an important role in the growth of the city of Dartmouth and helped bring the former city of Dartmouth to where it is today. And it would be my hope that if in fact there were a new community college built, and I'm glad to hear that there has been no conversation with respect to suggesting name change in that area, and that the minister would certainly look at it very closely if in fact there were a suggestion to see the legitimacy of why the name change ought to take place. The other question is with respect to the community college is that the community college land then becomes vacant, and as we know, that is land that is surplus to the province once again, and it belongs to the province. My understanding is, as a property now belongs to the province and also the facility. My question is has the government looked at, the Department of Education or any other department in government, looked at the potential use of that land and or the use of the facility and the land?
Thank you for the question. The Minister of the Department of Education, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Akerley campus is undergoing a renovation project. It will continue to be used. So Akerley is not going to become vacant, and the new college to be built down on the waterfront will.
Just adding more seats.
Adding more seats primarily.
And Leeds and Bell.
And just remember that on the other side, this side of the water, there will be some changes as well. So we're looking at really that community college in Metro as a system.
Thank you. Recognize the member from Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then if you're looking at the community college as a system, particularly in the metro area, then there's going to be defined courses in each of the particular facilities that are set aside. So there won't be a duplication of programs and services in the one institution versus the other. And I guess my question is that if in fact the I.W. Akerley Community College is going to be an extension of the community of colleges which offer education, then my question is that what kind of programs and services are going to be offered out of the existing I.W. Akerley Community College, and do you have any information about that?
Thank you. Recognize the Minister of the Department of Education.
I don't have detailed information, Mr. Chairman, but I do know that the food services programs and food service and accompanying food services hospitality programs are being consolidated. They expanded the facility. I had the privilege of going over to their Touch of Class dinner this year, and one of the things that the college officials proudly spoke of was that those programs were going to be located in that campus, and it's going to be better for everybody.
Member, just like to recognize you, the member from Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, that exhausts my questions to you as the Minister of Education, and I would like to pass my time over to the member of Halifax Needham.
Thank you, the member from Dartmouth North, for your questions this afternoon. I'm going to recognize the member from Halifax Needham, and you have approximately 20 minutes in turn.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Minister, I want to talk to you about sex. The booklet. I want to talk to you about the failure of school boards across the province to provide some uniformity in the distribution of the Healthy Sexuality for Adolescents handbook. Now, we have in front of us on the floor of this House a bill, Bill 46. It's a piece of government legislation creating the Office of Health Promotion. And that bill talks about the need to promote a culture of good health and general preventative health measures in a number of areas, healthy living, addictions, tobacco control, physical activity, nutrition, and healthy sexuality. And your colleague, the minister responsible for the Office of Health Promotion, his office has been involved in researching and writing and focus group testing this manual for young people. Yet we have seen many of the school boards in this province refuse to participate in that process of the distribution of this piece of information to our students. So I want to start by asking you why you as Minister, perhaps I missed it, I haven't heard you as Minister of Education speak to this issue, and I want to ask you if you did, and if not, why you weren't more supportive of your own colleague and this piece of government legislation in ensuring that that handbook is distributed in a uniform way across the province through our school boards.
Thank you, member, for the question. I'd like to direct that to the Minister of the Department of Education. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And the honourable member raises a good point, and clearly lifestyle choices and are things which make for healthy individuals. The publication, as the member has correctly